Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema podcast, the show where we go back to the blockbuster new release wall of our memories, grab a copy off the shelf, pop it in the old VCR, and see what time has done to it. My name's Justin, that's Mike.
Yes, that's me. Let me pause here for a second. You picked this movie, I guess, obviously, if people read the podcast title, they know this is Point Break. Okay. You picked this movie as kind of a yin and yang with Silence of the Lambs. Is that what this was? Is it being the same year? Or were you being more nefarious? And you picked this movie because it has another, like, singer appearing in a cameo in the movie.
Well, I did none of those things, Mike. As you recall, you picked this movie.
No.
You're trying to disavow responsibility already.
Suck you darned. Well, good afternoon, people.
Yeah, and we are here to help you navigate all the landmines littered down memory lane. So there we go, Mike. I think you kind of jumped the gun a little bit. You were so excited to deny any culpability for this show. We're right in the middle of it.
I forgot
so,
about that.
Yeah, so it's at the time that we're recording this, it's Labor Day weekend. And Mike, as you recall, this is a special place in our hearts. This is typically when we would be at Dragon Con.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
The slightly younger version of ourselves were a staple at that Atlanta event. And I'm seeing some photos from that on some of the Instagram pages I follow, and I'm a little sentimental about it, Mike. I kind of wish we were there.
Yeah, and you got Clemson playing down there too on Labor Day, so I'm missing twice the fun.
Yeah, it's the world is passing us by slowly but surely. But the other thing about this weekend is it's kind of the end of the summer, Mike, and it's the end of the our what we would call our endless summer. See what I did there, Mike? Endless summer surfing.
Beautiful.
So we're going to look at one of our favorite movies, Mike. This is called Point Break, and it stars, we'll get to that in a minute, but we're excited to take on this one. This is typically been referred to as a wet Western, Mike, which I like that one. It's pretty cool. I like that title.
I'll just leave that right there. Okay.
Yeah. So why don't we just kind of get into the basics, because I think we've embarrassed ourselves quite enough already. All right. So Point Break was released on July 12th, 1991. It was directed by Kathryn Bigelow. You might remember her from Zero Dark 30, The Hurt Locker, for which she was the first woman to win an Academy Award as a director. She did one of our favorites, Mike, Near Dark. We've talked about that several times.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny because this kind of takes us back to when we're talking about aliens and talking about how great James Cameron is at doing female protagonists. Look at how good Kathryn Bigelow does at male protagonists. It's kind of fun. It's kind of yin yang again. Near Dark, Hurt Locker, Point Break. I mean, these are guy movies, and here's a woman behind the helm, doing it like better than any guy could do it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, she also did K-19, the Widowmaker, the Harrison Ford submarine, which is a great movie too. But what's cool about her is she's kind of a badass. She does not accept typically women directors kind of pigeonhole themselves unfairly into like romantic comedies or dramas or period pieces, but she has no issues taking on the big movies, big action movies, and she does them extremely well. There's a phenomenon in Hollywood they call male gaze and female gaze by directors, and the male gaze for directors when you kind of gaze into the female or the women in the roles and kind of objectify them, right? But they kind of reversed the terminology of her, and they called it a male gaze. It's like where she gazes into the male characters and kind of humanizes them rather than objectify them. And, there's a lot of pretty boys in this movie, but what she managed to do is to really to go past that and look at these people as real characters. And that's probably a little pretentious to start this dumb summer movie off with, but she's really talented. Let's say that. So. It was written by a guy named Rick King, who also served as a producer. But the screenplay was written by this guy named Peter Iliff. He's kind of famous for Varsity Blues, Patriot Games, and Mike, I know one of your favorites, Prayer of the Roller Boys, starring Corey Haim, the skateboard epic. That was his first movie. His second movie was this one, and the the producer Rick King gave him a paltry $6,000 to write. Paid $6,000 to write this script. So even back in 1991, that wasn't a heck of a lot of money. So this guy ended up like waiting tables during the day and then writing the script at night. And overall, the budget was a budget of about $24 million, and it was kind of ready to rock into 1991 summer landscape. Pretty crowded summer there as well. So, Mike, I know there were some big names in this cast. You want to kind of walk us through?
Yeah, let's do that. We have our protagonist, Keanu Reeves, who luckily we got to see before in Speed. And as far as I remember, was his first action movie that I could think of. I know he'd obviously been in Bill and Ted and the movie we mentioned before, River's Edge, as legitimate actor, serious actor. And I think he was in My Private Idaho, I think, too. But, really good flicks, really intense movies. It's not except for Bill and Ted. This is his first action movie for Cool Breeze. Patrick Swayze as the...
I caught that.
Yeah. As, I don't know what to call Patrick Swayze in this movie. He's not, he's kind of the anti-hero in a way, but he's, he shows his colors near the end of the movie. Spoilers. But, I want to tell people that, Patrick Swayze is not just for women. He's not just your ghost and your dirty dancing actor. This is a man's man. This is Red Dawn. This is Roadhouse Patrick Swayze. This is with a little bit of, with the same Roadhouse kind of vibe of like, sayings and little. The
warrior poet, the philosophical,
exactly, with
badass,
his Zen attitude, but with his anti-corporate kind of message to himself. It's kind of cool. We have Lori Petty as the female interest, I could say. Like you were saying, Catherine Bigelow, she probably focused more on the men in this movie because Lori Petty is kind of she's kind of a foil between the two characters. She was famous as an actress for a couple of years there. I know she was in League of Their Own and Tank Girl. I remember her from classic. And Free Willy, I think, too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But she's in this movie, like I said, just to kind of be a little eye candy. She likes to walk around lingerie and dress underneath a towel for some reason. Gary Busey, he's Keanu Reeves' partner in this movie.
I'm just going to start laughing now if that's okay.
I know, right? Most people know him as Jake Busey's dad, of course. But at one time he was really on a great track to being a good actor. He was in Buddy Holly's Story and played the title character. And I don't think he won the Oscar, but I know he's nominated at the time. But then he made two big mistakes. He decided to ride motorcycles and he starred in DC Cab. But from then on, he kind of entered a decade of obscurity and then reappeared in Point Break and a few other movies as a villain or kind of comic relief character. But
short of Buddy Holly, he's played Gary Busey in every movie he's ever been in.
Pretty
he just
much
plays that guy. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And unfortunately, he was doing a little too much playing recently in a park in near LA, I believe, where he was. Yeah, he was reported. This is still
allegedly.
Thank you, Justin. Had his pants around his knees, and he was smoking a cigar. Not quite sure why, but that's all the news we know.
Well, how do you spend your Sundays?
That's right, exactly. And then you have your kind of side characters. You had John C. McGinley making a return on our podcast from The Rock and playing his usual kind of smarmy, the same character where he was in Platoon or Scrubs. Just take that character and just insert him in this movie.
White jerk.
That's right, white jerk. Pop quiz, hot shot. Justin, who do you think's better, Scott Glenn or John C. McGinley as a FBI head?
I got to go Glenn just because, Alan Shepard.
That's right. Yeah, of course. And he's, he looks a little bit better in the suit and tie.
And the mesh shirt.
Don't forget Urban Cowboy. And then you have a few characters that just kind of pop into the movie. And you're like, hey, I know that guy. Like Tom Sizemore, who
uncredited, yeah.
Yeah, uncredited. This was really cool. And then you just probably thought, yeah, that guy, and people know him from being in Heat or Saving Private Ryan, and just he's the put upon drug lord in this or drug agent in this movie. It's pretty funny. Tobias Beecher from Oz, Lee Tergesen. He's in this movie as a
Yeah.
kind of a bad guy, one of Patrick Swayze's buddies. Oh, then we come to the last cast member I want to mention, Anthony Kiedis, lead singer of
nice
Red Hot
catch.
Chili Pepper.
you
Singer
go.
of the Red Hot Chili Peppers somehow appears in this movie with a couple lines, and then he gets shot in the foot, which, my God, that was my favorite part of this movie.
He deserved it too, I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah. What an ass. Stupid.
Yeah.
That's your cast.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Well, nicely done. Just a few notes on that cast. Patrick Swayze originally read for the role of Keanu Reeves, Johnny Utah's role, but they gave it to Keanu, of course. That was at director Catherine Bigelow's insistence. She did not. She wouldn't agree to take this role or this film without Keanu being the lead. Some other characters considered for the lead. The studio was not happy with Keanu because, like we mentioned, he was just this is his first action movie, and they weren't real sure that he could carry it, so they wanted a bigger name like Johnny Depp was considered, Val Kilmer, Willem Dafoe, which I thought was an interesting choice, Charlie Sheen, and then I think my personal favorite, Mike, Matthew Broderick, was considered for the role. Yeah. Well, the Hollywood suits know better. They thought that he would be a good in that role, and they also insisted that this movie be called Johnny Utah. But the production team said no, it doesn't convey anything about surfing. That's the kind of what they were trying to pitch. So they said no, and the studio came back. Well, let's call it Riders on the Storm. I guess oblivious to the fact that there was a Doors movie coming out like 2 weeks later.
I was going to say, that was the same year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So they finally convinced the suits to say, look, let's call it Point Break. That's kind of indicative of where the wave breaks on the shore. So they figured out how to get through with that title at least. One of the cast members you did not mention, Mike, but for good reason, Elizabeth Berkley, one of your personal favorites, Mike. I know.
Who was she in this movie? I mean, does she just?
She was her scenes were cut out. She appears in the credits, but her scenes were actually cut out of the film. So I know. That probably might have saved it for you, Mike.
I thought she might have been the girl that came out of the shower and was like trying to fight off Keanu Reeves and stab him. That seemed like a role for her.
No. Unfortunately, she was not there.
Darn it.
So that actress has her name in the film was like Thunder Train. But we'll get to her later.
Okay.
All right, so we're back in 1991, as we mentioned. We're in the lobby getting ready to see this movie, Mike. So there's a few things going on in 1991. The previous week, Terminator 2 and Problem Child were released, so they had some serious competition. As you know, Problem Child really took over the country, the box office. But so that was in the theater at the same time. This movie was released on the same weekend as Boys in the Hood.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, I love that movie, but I did not love being an usher during this movie's premiere. There were a few problems in the theater the night that we premiered Boys in the Hood. There were some people wearing some blue shirts and some people wearing some red shirts, and they decided that they had a few scores to settle. They had a few scores to settle that weren't related to the movie. Let's just say I spent a lot of time sweeping and cleaning up that theater, Mike. Yeah, and also this. Speaking of Keanu, so this is a Keanu Reeves-led vehicle, but he was also in the following weekend. They released Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, so it was the summer of Keanu, man.
Wow.
He had back-to-back Keanu Reeves releases, so just can't get enough.
That's a lot of woe.
That's a lot of woe. Yeah. So just and some other things about 1991. Roseanne and Murphy Brown were our favorite TV shows. President Bush had just declared the Gulf War a total victory a couple months earlier, so that was it. The United States solved all the problems in the Middle East, so nothing's wrong there now. So, USA. The minimum wage got raised to $4.25 an hour, Mike.
Wow, goodness gracious!
And I think it's gone up like $2 since, something like that. USA. One of my favorite stats about 1991, Mike. Salsa officially overtook ketchup as the most ordered condiment. And you know why that is, Mike? Because
People
people like to say
say
salsa.
salsa.
That's true. The top songs on the radio were Brian Adams' "Everything I Do." Mike, I know it's one of your
Oh
best one,
no.
and "Color Me Bad" wanted to sex us up. So
That was 91. Oh, where was grunge,
yeah,
man? Oh my god.
it was on the doorstep. We only had a few more years to go when we would
Anthony
be okay.
Kiedis was too busy doing movies and not in the studio, I guess, huh?
yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. So let's go to first watch. Mike, why don't you go first?
Oh, me? When you mentioned Boys in the Hood, it kind of triggered a memory. I think I might have seen this with my friend David when we would go to the Dollar Movie Theater in Greenville and go see movies there, like way after they came out. But I might not. I don't think I saw this the first weekend, so I think it's one of those movies like I saw it then.
I got you.
Yeah,
That's
it wasn't. I wasn't like excited to see. I wasn't a big Patrick Swayze fan. Didn't Ghost come out right before this? Because I felt really.
Yeah, I think so. I think Ghost might have come out after, if I'm not
Did
mistaken.
it? I couldn't remember. It was something in my head. Maybe it was not liking Dirty Dancing. Maybe I'll blame it. I'll blame Dirty Dancing. I despise that movie, and the fact that I didn't want to see a Patrick Swayze movie. I had no feelings.
It
about
might have been. Yeah, it was before that. I think Ghost came out later that year, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So. Wow, 91 was
yeah.
That was a biggie.
I'm telling you that the 90s. You could say that every year there was just amazing amounts of movies.
Right.
So, I remember my first time I saw this. I was on a date with again the girl I was dating before my wife, and she had, let's say, feelings for Keanu Reeves. Mike, she reacted certain ways to seeing Keanu in the theater, and so I ended up seeing a lot of Keanu Reeves movies when we were dating, and I just wanted to be in the vicinity. In the area when those feelings started to kick in, but I remember seeing this and thinking, I didn't want to like it because I was just sick of his movies before. But this one I actually kind of enjoyed. I thought it was kind of a very good action movie. But I had not seen it since last night when we watched this to review it. So interesting. Yeah.
There was like
Well,
I saw it that one time. I don't know if this was a movie I would assume they showed it a lot on network TV or TBS or TNT or something, but I don't even remember catching it even like a minute, just kind of going by surfing the channels.
Yeah, it's not really available. It's not really out there a whole lot. It should be, but we'll get to that. All right, so Mike, I think we've kind of yammered around long enough. You want to get this thing started?
Let's do it, bro.
All right, hit the button. So right away, the movie kind of opens up with some really beautiful cinematography of guys surfing on the waves, and there's this coming together, the font of Point and Break and Swayze and Keanu, and you get this amazing sound too. The sound and the cinematography of this is right away, you can just tell it is really cool. And then this is kind of intercut between a very wet Keanu shooting targets at the FBI training range.
It had to be raining, right?
Yeah, it always rains, and no one has an umbrella in this movie. But he's knocking down his targets. He's just as deadly as Bobby Hill at the State Fair, Mike, wouldn't you say?
That's right. Oh my! He's as good as Clarice Starling in the ropes course.
Right. So Keanu gets assigned to this office, the FBI office in Los Angeles, and he meets John C. McGinley, his detective boss. And you can tell that he's kind of a jerk already. Yeah. But he's very dismissive and very condescending to everybody, and that's kind of his role. He ends up meeting Angelo Pappas, Mike, his partner, played by the aforementioned Gary Busey.
Looking
Angelo
very Greek.
Pappas.
Yes.
Yeah. If Greeks lived in the mountains of Tennessee, I think. But yeah. Opa. But the minute you see Gary walk on the screen, you can tell right away, we got a dead man walking here. You can just tell he's got a ticking time bomb on his chest. He's not going to make it. But yeah, so and then the next scene we kind of cut to what they call the ex-presidents, Mike. It's a gang of bank robbers all wearing masks of former presidents. And they're robbing this bank, and they pull it off without a hitch, and they're under there without 90 seconds. And as they kind of finish up their first robbery, it kind of cuts to Keanu and Gary Busey watching the tape, and Gary Busey has this theory about this that everybody makes fun of him for it, but he has a suspicion that the ex presidents are surfers, Mike. But in order to get that confession, that has to be coaxed out of him by Keanu. And I kept thinking about the scene in They Live where Roddy Piper's trying to get the guy to put on the sunglasses.
Put on the glasses.
But they had this unnecessary long fight about coaxing this elaborate theory out of Gary Busey. So Keanu kind of gives in, and they decide that he'll go undercover on the beach to kind of understand if he can lead to clues, just to test out Gary Busey's theory. So Keanu grabs this oversized surfboard and goes out to the water, and finds out immediately through how great cinematography is how hard it is to surf. He farms it, as they say. So he's out there trying to surf, and he gets kind of beat up, and we get to see elements of the tribalism in the surfing community. How the locals get angry with him for going out there and taking up their waves. But Lori Petty gets introduced here. She kind of pulls him in, and after he gets tucked under the water, and she pulls him out of the water, and you think she's very helpful and polite, and then she starts beating him up and telling him he's a jerk and get off the beach and that kind of thing. So, yeah. But this is where we first meet Patrick Swayze. This is we get introduced to Bodie. His name is Mike Bodie.
It's short for Bodhisattva or something like that.
Yeah. But through a wonderful montage.
I was going to do
lots of montages, Mike.
I was going to get to that. I was all into this movie until the montage, and I know I might mention this later on into this, but the surfing training montage, the ubiquitous kind of montage, it really, the whiff of the 90s was just all over. That's just that whole feeling of, oh my gosh, it was with the little song in the background, I will not fail, or I will not fall, or whatever the hell it was. It's like, oh my God. I couldn't even look at the I had such cringe and such douche chills. I could not even look at the screen during the little montage filming scene.
It's okay. It's okay, Mike. It'll get better.
And then after they see Bodie and they meet his buddies and they play the nighttime football, like literally 5 minutes after that scene, is another montage of them playing football.
Yeah, I did notice the double montage there.
Yes.
So Keanu decides to take advantage of Lori Petty because he thinks she might be an in. So he goes in her file and finds out that she's an orphan, and then he decides to tell her that please teach me how to surf because my parents passed away and blah blah blah. But he kind of lies to her to develop this relationship, and then he introduces her to the gang with Bodie. And you mentioned they have another montage right after the first learning how to surf montage, where they're all playing football. And Mike, what I thought was interesting here, the beach they're playing football at, that was the very same beach they filmed the Karate Kid scene.
Oh, nice.
Where he fights the skeletons on the beach. Just interesting plot point there, right? So, yeah. But you can understand that Keanu and Patrick Swayze, that's where they start to develop a bit of their bromance here, Mike.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is the linchpin to our movie, is the bromance between Bodie and Hotshot.
Yeah. So Swayze invites the two to a party at his house, and I love this party scene, Mike. You talk about 90s. They're playing If 6 Was 9 by Jimi Hendrix, and there's a lot of interesting interpretive dance going on at this party. But he starts to piece together that he sees that there's some potential opportunities for suspects in the ex-president. So that leads him to this beach where the next day where he goes to set out these no good doers. He starts to surf on the beach, and those guys kind of beat the crap out of him. And we get introduced to Anthony Kiedis here, Mike. Here's a fun story. The gorilla bad guy surfer guys. Catherine Bigelow let them kind of synchronize or choreograph their own fight scenes. Everybody kind of showed up to understand how they would do that, except for Anthony Kiedis. He thought he was too important, so he didn't show up for any of that rehearsals. And so Catherine Bigelow's response to that was Kiedis would get punched in the face immediately and not get to throw any punches. He just got beat up right away, took one punch.
Beautiful.
It's kind of a petty hate. So, there you go. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah. But we start to understand that Tank Girl is really starting to fall for Keanu here, and they start to develop this relationship. So the trail leads to this gang that beat up Keanu, and they decide to do a raid on their house to see if there's any potential links to the bank robberies, and it goes bad, Mike.
Tits up.
Yeah. So Keanu kind of shows up with the FBI to raid this house, and he gets beat up by a naked lady.
Yes.
And it just goes sideways. And then we mentioned Tom Sizemore. It turns out that they kind of upset this. The feds were in there kind of tracking these guys for weeks and weeks, and they kind of botched their whole investigation. So strike two with John C. McGinley. So he shows up and starts, laying down the law with these guys. So, so the next morning, Keanu decides to go surfing with Bodie and Lori Petty. And he has an epiphany as he's on the beach. He starts to see, how much Bodie is a surfer and how much he knows about surfing, and his kind of philosophy about how he's an outcast from society, and he he get that whole philosophical thing, and he starts to freak out that he may be the leader of the ex-presidents. So he starts to case them. So he acts on that theory, and they start to case out this bank because they suspect that they're going to rob the bank. And sure enough, they're sitting in the car, and it's Gary Busey and Keanu. And we learned that Gary Busey really loves Calvin and Hobbes here. It was a horrible scene.
It was so Busey. It was like just.
Oh yeah, they have one job to do, Mike. It's to watch the bank to make sure it doesn't get robbed. And yeah, they screw that up. So Gary Busey thinks that getting a couple meatball subs is more important, so he sends Keanu out to the sandwich shop. And of course, as he does, the robbery starts to go down. My biggest takeaway from this scene, Mike, was it was only $7.84 for
amazing,
2 lemonades, 2 meatball sandwiches, and a tuna fish sandwich.
Yeah, crazy.
They had one job. So he gets back with the sandwiches, and he takes a big bite and sees that the ex-presidents are robbing the bank, and they kind of run to try to chase it. And we get a really cool scene here, Mike, where they pursue on foot. Keanu chases down, and it's some really cool camera work here. Kind of never been done before.
Yeah, it was. It was one of my takeaways when I first saw this movie. Before I watched it for the second time last night, I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember the foot chase scene," because I don't know if it's been copied since or if these guys were copying Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But like
write my notes.
Oh yeah, this is like. But that scene, and then just the opening scene where they're first at the FBI office, and Johnny Utah's kind of going around the office. It's like one continuous shot, and there's some real, like you said it before, the surfing scenes. It's the cinematography and just the innovative kind of use of the camera was fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, a lot of that's got to do with cinematography, and a lot of it's the way Catherine Bigelow kind of framed the scenes. She wanted the bigger spiritual stuff to be open ended and wide open shots, but everything inside is really kind of cut together and tight and claustrophobic, especially all the bank scenes. So you really kind of don't have any idea of size or scale. But these chases are very kind of claustrophobic and very frenetic, and it really added to the drama. The scene is really kind of cool. Mm-hmm. We get that iconic scene where Swayze lights the gas pump and uses it as a flamethrower.
Oh yeah, and has a Reagan mask still on. It's like
yeah. Kids, do not try that at home. I don't think that works that way. But yeah, so at a point in the movie, towards the third act here, the penny gets dropped, and Lori Petty realizes that Keanu is not a lawyer as he states, but he is actually an FBI agent, and she confronts him by shooting the pillow while he's sleeping. Subtle. But after this big chase scene, the ex-presidents realize that this guy they've befriended and put into their inner circle is an FBI agent, and they
Uh-oh.
start to freak out and want to get out of the country, right? And Patrick Swayze, being very zen, says, "No, trust me, I got a plan." So they go to his house that morning, to Keanu's house, and say, "Hey, come on, we got to go." Uh, you know, 100% pure adrenaline rush thing kicks in. They throw him in the car, and they take him skydiving, Mike.
Of course.
And you think, oh, maybe they're going to kill him or throw him out of the plane, but they actually give Johnny Utah a parachute, and they do this really cool scene, the skydiving scene, where this was actually Swayze doing the jumps, which I thought was kind of cool. But it's kind of this life affirming thing for Keanu, and he's like, he's living life, living the thrill of it just kind of overcomes him, and he gets lulled into this false sense of security, and they kind of go to this airport and kind of buddy buddy, and as they do, Bodie brings him into the back of this van and shows him that one of the gang members has kidnapped Lori Petty, and they kind of blackmail him and leverage him to say, you need to let us out of this, let us get out of the country, or bad things are going to happen to Tank Girl. So the final act is that they make Keanu get in one of their last bank robberies, and he doesn't get the ex-president mask, Mike. He gets to go there,
Oh yeah. Sorry to say,
just
you
as
won't become
Keanu.
president. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He gets no bullets in his gun, and they make him part of the bank robbery, so they make sure he's on camera and kind of frame him. So as they're robbing this last bank, it goes bad, Mike. So because there's an undercover cop, of course, and
Of course.
and the security office who looks scarily like Kevin from The Office.
Yes. Oh my God. I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
That was funny.
But it kind of goes sideways, and the cop shoots LBJ, one of the ex-president surfer gang members, and then Bodie shoots the cop, and he's not into violence, but so this kind of wrecks the whole thing. So they all just kind of spread out, but it goes bad here, Mike, and people are dead, and it's no longer a Mountain Dew commercial. It's like a real crime issue.
It got real. Yeah.
Yeah, and so of course Keanu gets arrested on the scene, and then John C. McGinley shows up and starts raising holy havoc, and Gary Busey has had enough of his attitude by then, and just cold cocks him, decks him. So the moral here is, Mike, if you don't like your boss, you can just punch him.
Well, you got to respect your elders, Justin. Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right. So Gary Busey, after he violently assaults his boss, takes Keanu Reeves in his car to bring him in, and then of course he takes the handcuffs off and says, "We know where they are. Let's go." And they head to the airport, and they intercept the ex-presidents getting onto the plane to escape, and we have yet another kind of Reservoir Dogs scene here, Mike, where everything kind of goes awry.
Yep.
The expiration date on Gary Busey finishes off. He gets shot, and he expires to a loud no by Keanu. Acting. So most of the presidents have been killed at this point, and it's just Bodie and Keanu are in the plane. And I'm not sure if the pilot was Jimmy Buffett or not, Mike, but he might have.
Chris Isaac.
So into the plane, and they get over into Mexico, and Swayze kind of bails out, and Keanu doesn't have a parachute, so he decides that he's just going to go after him anyway. He just jumps out of the plane without a parachute, and speeds to him and kind of intercepts him in midair. And unfortunately, the Mythbusters, Mike, that show, the Mythbusters, they proved out that this was physically impossible. The laws of physics would not suggest that Keanu could catch up with him, but Hollywood doesn't need that kind of who needs that kind of element, right? But it made for a cool scene. So Keanu kind of Supermans his way and kind of grabs onto Swayze, and they like pull the cord like the last second. They both land pretty hard, and Keanu's got a bad knee, and he can't sustain the landing, and Bodie kind of rolls away. At this point, one of the remaining gang members that was holding Lori Petty hostage shows up, and they let her go. And of course, they make sure that she's in a negligee for this scene.
Of course.
But he picks up Bodie, and they escape. And then Keanu feels bad. So we cut we do a little time jump here to about 9 months later, and Keanu's hair has grown out significantly in 9 months. But he's walking on this beach in Australia without an umbrella, of course,
Of
and
course.
he suspects that Swayze is at his last hurrah, because he had mentioned earlier that he had found his dream was to go out surfing the world's biggest wave in Australia, and this is the 50-year swell, and sure enough, that's where he is. So they had this one final fight on the beach before Swayze makes his way out to the wave, and as Swayze is drowning Keanu clips some handcuffs on him and binds him together so he can't catch his wave. And then because of the bromance they've had and the feelings they have for each other, he convinces Keanu just to let him go. And Keanu says, fine, just go, like out of his last little respect for him. And then Swayze goes out and catches the world's biggest wave, and just it's implied that he dies in the process.
He eats
Mike.
it. That's the same. Fun fact: that's the same beach where the Goonies were filmed. So there you go.
Was that it? Was it really?
Yeah, it was like
look at you.
Right near Cannon Beach there in Oregon. It's substituted for Australia apparently. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Australian policemen that are with Keanu says, "Well, we'll get him when he comes back." And
what
and
you doing, mate?
Keanu says, and then Keanu says, "He's not coming back." And he throws his badge in the water.
Oh, yes.
And then we get the rat song, Mike.
Rat. Yes.
Rat.
We've
got a rat problem
right there. Yes.
Yeah, we got a rat problem, but it's a good one.
It's a good one. They're out of the cellar, Justin.
Yeah. Yes, they are. And that was the end of the movie, Mike. And so that was a kind of a rush shot summary of it, guys, and we kind of botched a lot of it, but it's our show, so we can do what we want. But it was a fun movie, and people generally loved it. It only made $8 million in its opening weekend. I think a lot of that had to do with the crowded box office, but it did end up making $43 million domestically and about $83 million worldwide. So, Mike, I know you're dying to know, what awards did it win?
This is pre-MTV Awards, right?
No, this is right in the sweet spot of MTV.
Oh, was it?
Man.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Best action scene, best sports movie, best chase scene.
There you go. Okay, so sadly, no Oscars were nominated for this movie, but it did win, as we mentioned, our MTV Awards. It was nominated for Best Action Sequence. It lost to the Terminator 2 LA freeway scene, which that's legitimate. But it did. Swayze and Keanu were both nominated for the coveted title of Most Desirable Male.
Yes.
MTV, thank you. And Keanu won.
Wow, good for him.
Yeah.
Popcorn buckets for everyone.
Yeah. So it did have, there were plans for a 1993 sequel that were ultimately scrapped. No one could really explain why. It just never came to fruition. It did lead itself to a very unnecessary remake in 2015.
Oof.
It was written by the same guy that rewrote the remake of Total Recall.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so this guy had a history of remaking, movies no one asked for. But yeah, that movie had a $105 million budget and only made $28 million. So again, don't remake movies that you don't need to, guys. That's moral of the story.
It was done already, and it was done pretty well.
It's been done.
Yeah.
I don't understand this phenomenon. I get the rebooting, the reimagining element, but it stands to reason at some point that why not just re-release the original movie?
Right. Yeah, you would think they would. They do that with, like the Lord of the Rings movies. They re-release them maybe with like a little bit more footage or a cleaner image of it. They've added some, I don't know. Like with a movie like from '91, you could easily clean up the print and make it sharper, or I don't know. It'd be a re-release. It's like I said, well, like we'll get more into the review part, but except for the montage and some of the archaic language, I mean, it really, it would work for today as far as action.
Yeah, that's
story,
what I'm saying. there's nothing that a remake could add to this movie. I mean,
Yeah.
I could see if there were like some outdated concepts or if like a
Right.
special effects issue, but I
No.
mean, there's nothing in this original that wouldn't hold up now. In fact,
Right.
it's still really solid. Great story, great direction, great cinematography. If you want to introduce, a new audience to this concept, just put the concept out there. I think people would go
Right.
see it. But
Yeah.
uh, you know, but that's why we're not movie producers, Mike. We're just amateur podcasters doing this. It's easier to
Very
complain about it, I
amateurish.
guess.
That's right.
Very. So let's put it through the grumpy meter, Mike. Why don't you go first this time?
Ah, well, I kind of liked it the first time I saw it. Like I said, when I watched it last night, this was there were some things in it that, for me at least, watching it, it kind of showed its age as being dated a little bit, a little hokey. The Again, the montage and some of the music choices in here were a little baffling. Um, and just the bra, don't worry about it, bra. Some of the surfing language
Ugh.
kind of dates it, but that's true of a lot of movies we watch that are from the 60s and 70s. And this leads me to a interesting observation I made right after I watched this. Justin, this is gonna come out of left field. The not cinematographer, the screenplay writer. You said it was named Atliff or something like that. I forgot his name.
I,
You
Ilif.
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 Thank you,
Yeah. Yeah.
Ilif. I think I'm gonna accuse this guy of a little bit of plagiarism, just a tad, just a touch, smidge. Um, Not on the level of, like, My Sweet Lord and He's So Fine kind of plagiarism, but I think this guy watched a movie that we've both seen from the '60s called Wild Rebels. And stay
Ah.
with me here. Wild Rebels, if people in the audience don't know, it was kind of made famous by Mystery Science Theater, but it was on, it was a pretty popular movie in its day. I think it's from '67 or '68. But it's about a group of bank robbers who do it for the kicks. They really don't. They're not. They're not. They're not doing it for a particular monetary gain. But these are like some. One of them wears a Nazi helmet. They wear leather. They ride around on motorcycles. But they go to California and hit banks there, and they show up in Florida at another time in the year and hit banks there. And they find this guy who is not a football player, but he's a motor car driver, a race car driver, and he's fed up with his line of work, and they want to use him as a wheelman because the main guy, the leader of the gang, recognizes this guy and say, "Hey, I want to pick you to be in my gang." Of course, the rest of the gang is like, "Oh, I don't know about this guy. He's a square and he bugs me." But it's so similar to
Mike,
point. It's so
stop
similar
it.
to
You're
point.
killing me.
It's so similar to Point Break, and the fact that here they are robbing these banks for kicks, man, and they're using this ex sportsman in their team who's not an FBI agent. Let's say that's the one part, but he is recruited by the police to go undercover and figure out who these bank robbers are and where their next job's going to be. So and then at the end, the guy falls for a girl who's associated with the gang, and all the gang is shot, in this big shootout at the end, kind of Reservoir Dog style, but it's at a lighthouse. And I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, this movie has been done before. And we talked about movies that have been re-released or reimagined. Point Break is a reimagining of Wild Rebels. There you go.
Yeah, and neither one of those two is a Steve Alamo.
That's right. That buddy can
Leads
dance, man. Oh my gosh.
American singer and star of Wild Rebels. So that's a good analogy, Mike. I don't know what to say about
Thank
it
you.
other than
Yeah, but that being said, it's like you say, this movie Point Break could still be released today and be head and shoulders above a lot of other schlock that comes out. And like I
yeah.
said, a lot
I
of
think
it's
it's
the cinematography and having Bigelow at the helm of the movie really helps. But it's well done, well written. Kind of the pace of it is like like we said on Silence of the Lambs. There's not a lot of fluff there. I feel that way about this movie too.
yeah,
Even the little relationship,
yeah,
the montages could be edited out really easily, and this would be a great, fantastic 4-star movie for me.
yeah. I mean, this is what all 37 of the Too Fast, Too Furious movies are trying to be.
Yeah.
You know,
Agreed.
there's nothing different about it. So,
Mm-mm.
all right. So, thank you, Mike. The first time I saw it, like I said, I was a big fan of it. I think I was like, I would say a 3.5 out of 5, just because it was just a fun action movie. It was really well made. And then, I watched it again for the first time in 25 years, Mike, last night. And I 22 years, and I could say I enjoyed it. It was wonderfully dumb. I didn't
Yes.
groan too much. I think some of the stuff was just, some stuff is frozen in time, a lot of the dialogue and the music, of course. But in terms of like, how you structure, I mean, action movies like this they can become very formulaic if you're not careful. And there's things in this movie that are just they're unique and it's directed well. And
Right.
like as you mentioned, there's not a lot of fluff in here. It's just a very efficient movie. The action sequences are just that. They progress the plot, and they're not superfluous or gratuitous. They're really credible, and you know maybe it's armchair quarterback stuff, but Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, those guys are good.
Yeah.
They might have been pretty boys at the time, but having 20 years of maturity and stuff looking back on it, like these guys were great athletes, actors, and they were just there's an element of this too, Mike, that it makes me sad because I mean we were their age then, uh, and I remember the 1991 Justin was much more fun, athletic, charming, and I remember myself then more now than
Oh
and
no.
it's like now I look what I've become, and
This
it's
is
like, ugh. And if you look
it's
at if you look at like the actors that were in this on their IMDb pages, you see pictures of them now, and you're like, no, that can't be the same
oh I
guy.
know.
That can't be.
It's the same
Yeah,
feeling I got from after we watched Interview with a Vampire. You're watching two young actors at the top of their game having a bromance, and we look at Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise now, and you're like, wow, they look pretty damn good for their age.
yeah, and that not only are they like immortalized forever at their greatest, they still look good now. We can't say that. I mean, there's a few pictures of me from 1991. I'm like, oh wow, I don't look too bad there. I'm not too dumpy. My head isn't
Tough.
giant. I like the way I look there. But now when I look at myself, I'm like, oh boy. But it's I guess
that's, that's Monday morning
this is the
quarterbacking for you.
this is the grumpy part, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I enjoyed this, and I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5 on today's terms. I mean, it was a lot of these things we rewatch, and I'm like, I'll skip 10 seconds ahead just to kind of get through it a little bit quicker. But I didn't do that. I was
Yeah.
genuinely enjoying this movie,
Did you
and
did you get the same feeling I did with like getting kind of a our first podcast of the movie Twister? Do you get a similar kind of vibe that I did watching this? Like it was really well done, special effects hold up, action's really good, but some of the interaction with the characters is a little dated. And you
yeah,
get and the music
yeah.
choices kind of hurt it a little bit too because it just kind of shoehorns it into that '90s decade a little too much.
Oh yeah, totally. I had exactly the same vibe, and I think this movie is right in the sweet spot for this podcast.
Yeah,
It's uh, it's it's good enough, and I guess the word is I'm proud of it. I'm proud that it came out like
right.
during our generation, and I'm willing to forgive these little things because they were just that's the how like Manny Ramirez for the Red Sox, whenever he was such a great player, but whenever he had kind of his little foibles, the Boston guys, so that's just Manny being Manny.
Yeah,
And this movie just had a lot of that. That's just Manny being Manny elements. Yes, I'll forgive, uh, you know, the soundtrack and some of the dialogue because they were really indicative of the time, and these things are just kind of snapshots of when they were made. And but there's so much more that outweighs it that I'm willing to forgive these little things, and I think that's how I ultimately gauge these things at the end of the day. So I had a good time watching this. I didn't think I would, but
yeah.
Dalton from Roadhouse and
Neo,
John Wick.
John.
they're still pulling it off, and it's just good stuff. And like I said, it's corny, but I'm proud of these guys for some reason, and I just like what our generation kind of came up with. So
Take that.
shoot me.
Take that. Take that. 2022.
Exactly. Yeah. Uh, all right, let's move along. So this is the time of the show where we kind of talk about other things we may be watching or enjoying. So, Mike, you wanna go first?
Yes, a subject that has appeared on the internet a few times recently, and I don't know why. I've seen it in several articles and on YouTube, of course. Are endings of shows. In particular, endings of shows that either went, poorly or very well, like Breaking Bad. I don't know if the talk was generated from Better Call Saul or not, from that series ending, or maybe, maybe the restarting of a Game of Thrones show. But I read an article that mentioned a show that neither good nor bad as far as the ending goes, at least this guy's point of view. It was Lost. And the show Lost has one of the most talked about endings, up there with Sopranos. And the article, the point of the article was, at the time when people watch episodic television, that they had to wait a week between episodes, or 6 months between seasons sometimes, that there was too much anticipation for the next series or the next season, or then what was going to happen in Lost. Lost was based on cliffhanger endings to each episode, cliffhanger endings to the season. Anyway, this guy's theory was, if you binge the show, which he did, he watched all 6 seasons, it was a much better ending and made so much more sense watching it all together within a couple of days. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to watch all the Lost all over again and see if it does work better in short form, or watching it through a short window, rather than waiting and waiting and waiting and just being disappointed like I was, 10 or 12 years ago.
Wow, that's an interesting, albeit masochistic experiment, Mike.
Right.
So, if you need someone to take you to the hospital at the end, I'm your guy. So,
well, what got me was, I was in we were in a foreign country. Every damn show was in Spanish, except for one channel that had subtitles instead of dubbing, and it was Lost. And I started watching an episode. I think it was from season 3. And I watched the end of it. It's like, damn, I got to see what happens next, even though I'd already knew what happens next. So I watched the next episode. Damn, I got to see what happens next. So I ended up watching 4 damn episodes and staying up to like 1 or 2 in the morning. And I was thinking, you know what? I'm just going to watch this later. So that kind of spurred it. But then I saw these articles that were talking about it, and it was kind of cool. I was like, wow, okay, so somebody's out there doing this and thinking, hey, it worked for this guy. It wasn't scientific. It was just this guy's opinion, but I'm going to give it a second opinion and see if he's right.
well, that's very cool, and that you've offered a nice little segue to mine. I just finished up watching the series finale. The show ended just a couple weeks ago. It's a 6-season arc. It's a show called Animal Kingdom. I think it was on TNT. I think you can binge it on Amazon Prime. But what I thought was interesting about Animal Kingdom, it's very akin to this story. It's a crime family set in San Diego, and they're surfers and they're extreme sport guys, but they rob banks, and it's a heist, and they kind of perpetuate their lifestyle through robbing these really elaborate heists, and but it's got like a Mountain Dew commercial element to it. But it was kind of a melodramatic, fun crime series that I really enjoyed. It's not high art, but it did hold my attention for 60 some episodes. The lead character was Ellen Barkin. She's kind of the matriarch of this crime family. She's got these 3 sons that are varying degrees of nefarious, but they were really cool. It was a really good show, and so that's called Animal Kingdom, and I think people might like it, especially if you like to Point Break. So that's going to kind of wrap it up here, guys. Just to remind you that if you have any information about the show, you want to see what's coming, or you want to have any kind of interaction with us, you can reach out to us on our Instagram page. That's at Grumpy Nostalgia. And if you feel compelled to send us an email, you can reach us at nostalgiagrumps@gmail.com. So, Mike, that's going to kind of wrap it up. I don't think I can take any more. You got anything else before we head out here, Mike?
I have a tip for our next podcast, Justin, and this is directed at you. I want to tell you to speak into the microphone, Squid Brain.
Duly noted. Thank you, sir. All right, guys, thanks for listening. And this is for Mike James. This is Justin, and we'll see you again next time.